This is part 3. So I did this through writing. He was speaking to me. So then my new devotion time became, okay, I'm going to go ahead and say a quick prayer, read scripture, and then journal. And I did that for a while. I still never heard the Lord speaking to me. I never heard like the Lord's voice outside of me journaling. Another year went by. So this is time that goes by. The Lord took me through another process, and he was doing a lot of things within that. It's just I didn't really hear from him. There was a time that I know for sure that the Lord was like, it's time. I knew it because I was going in these cycles. I was just in these cycles. I was in these sin cycles. I was just repeating things over and over. I would try to do right. Then I would get stretched and I would get tested and tried in the spiritual warfare, all that. And I would just be like, nah, I'm done. And I would fall off and I would just go completely left. And then the Lord would have to pick me back up. And each time I would move a little further, but I was just getting stretched. But I realized it was cycle, so I said, I got to break free. I'm going to go after God with everything I have. It's done. It's over. I'm tired of this. I'm about to just seek God with everything I got. I need to know God for real. I need to know his voice. I need to know him. I'm giving this world up. I'm done. It's like for real. To heck with anything else that's around me that's not of God, right? Like people, places, thing, none of it matters. None of it matters but God. So I got on this track where I was just pursuing the Lord with everything that I had. I was getting up in the morning at like 2 o'clock in the morning because I was still working at the time. 2 o'clock in the morning, I was seeking God's voice, seeking to hear from him. I was reading the Bible. I was praying. I was just worshiping. I was doing what I knew to do. I would work out. I would go to work. I would have like scripture in my ear all day. I would have a Bluetooth on, or I would have like prophetic videos, or I would have just sermons, stuff going on in my ear all day. During my lunchtime, I would be listening for the Lord, to hear the Lord try to talk to me and hear what he wanted me to say, I just wanted to give him a chance to do that. I would ask him questions, ask him things. I just started inviting him in my day. I would go check in with my children, spend time with them, 20 and 22 years old. And then I would work on projects that I felt like the Lord was asking me to do. And then I would sleep. No entertainment, no chill time, no nothing. We was just gunning for the Lord. It was like go time. I got to break out of cycles. The Lord took me through this process where he started training me. He started training me to hear his voice. And what he would do is I would write, and then he would say, okay, like one morning it was like 3 o'clock in the morning. He was like, go ahead and wash the dishes, clean the house. And I'm like, I did not wake up this early to clean the house. But he started showing me, he's like, okay, now go over here and go clean the stove. Okay, now do this. Now go do that. And he wanted me to come off of the paper and learn his voice when I was in action, to hear it. So I was like, okay, that's what his voice sounds like. One time I went for a run and he was like, all right, do you want to go to the fitness park? And I was like, I don't know where it's at. It's like Old Dark 30. And he said, do you trust me to show you? And I said, yeah. And he said, okay, up here, go left. Now go up 2 lights, turn right. Now go up to this light, turn left. And all of a sudden, like I was at the fitness park. So he showed me like how I could depend on him. And he still does that every once in a while. When I go for a run, he's like, do you trust me to show you how to get back? But he's showing me like, I know all things. If you have questions, I'll show you. Then there was a time where I thought I was ministering to this woman, and I was, but she also had a word from the Lord for me. She was like, I think you should start a podcast. And I was like, Well, the Lord hasn't told me to start and before I even finish my sentence, he was like, yeah. So I went to the store because I didn't know nothing about podcast equipment. I didn't know nothing about any kind of technology, none of that stuff. None of it. Never had to get any of that stuff ever in my life. So I got there and I felt like I heard him telling me different things, but I just wasn't sure. And the guy didn't know. He was shaky. He was Googling stuff, and it was a lot of money that I didn't even have at the time. I just put it on my credit card, but I didn't have a lot even on my credit card. So I got like overwhelmed and I got ready to walk out of the store. I just put everything away and was like, all right. As I got ready to walk out, the Lord was like, go back. So I went back. And the Lord was like, put your hand on every single thing that I told you to get, and I'll tell you yes or no. And he's like, that's another way. So sometimes I still do that to this day when I'm unsure, because sometimes I'll get just overwhelmed. And I just need confirmation, and he'll be like, yes, no. So I take you through all that to allow you to see it was really a process with me and the Lord. There was a time before all of that when I really wanted to hear from him and I couldn't hear from him. And I was so upset, so bothered that I couldn't hear from him. I'm like, this is why I don't try to sit in your presence, because I don't hear from you. And that's when he told me, is my presence not enough? So I need you to understand the background of all that I'm telling you to do when we're talking about hearing from the Lord. This is a submission and a surrender to the Lord. This is your second yes. I didn't know what all it entailed when I first said yes. All I knew is you were knocking on the door of my heart and I responded. But now that I know, I'm inviting you back in and I'm saying yes. Now that I know it's a loss of my whole life and you actually want to lead my whole life, and I have to deny myself, take up my cross. I have to lay down my will, my wants, my plans, my desires so that I can embrace yours. I'm ready. And you say yes. And it's a seeking and going after Jesus so you can make sure that you are in alignment with the Lord and you could develop a relationship with the Lord where you know him. And you could develop intimacy with him and he can lead you and guide you and you really walk with the Lord. So that's why doing a bunch of church activity, trying to be a good person and telling people to try Jesus ain't enough if you're not in relationship with him and walking with him and being led by him. The Lord has a purpose for you. And he wants to be able to build you up for that purpose. He wants to be able to heal you. He wants to be able to reveal your identity to you, reveal your purpose to you, remove the layers that this world has placed on you, teach you who you are, your spiritual giftings. He wants to make you anew. The Lord has a broader picture for what he wants to do with you. He wants to restore you and transform you. He wants to overhaul you. You gotta let him. You gotta let him do it. And that's one of the ways how you let him do it. So the question that I got, one of them was about, do you read scripture? Do you worship? What is it that you do? So we're getting ready to talk just a little bit about that. Part 4.